Hello and welcome back. So, today, what I wanted to do was talk about something that is really so fleeting that most people miss it entirely. And what that would be is microexpressions. So, I actually wasn't sure what I wanted to talk about today. And I created a poll for a couple of friends of mine to pick and choose what I was going to discuss, and the winner was microexpressions, which is actually a favorite topic of mine. I absolutely love the study of microexpressions. What they are is they're little tiny flashes of truth. It's quick glances of emotion that pass over the face in less than half a second, basically. And for me, with my career in the therapy room, these things can mean everything. Basically, what are microexpressions? Microexpressions are an involuntary facial expression that reveals a person's true emotional state before they can consciously conceal or control it. And it usually lasts between 1/4 to 1/2 of a second. It is very fast. It's very subtle. You really have to know what you're looking at or looking for whenever it shows up. Something important to know is that there are basically 7 universal microexpressions, and that's based on the work of Dr. Paul Ekman. And those microexpressions, universal ones, are happiness, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, surprise, and contempt. And it's important to remember that when it comes to these expressions, they're not just facial tics. These are reflexes. They show up before the brain can really filter the emotional response for the person. That's what makes them very powerful, especially in a therapy setting where people often wear emotional armor. So people will come to me and they'll be ready to tell their life story. Whenever they finally get into the room to talk to me, they realize that they are so ready to reveal all these secrets to an absolute stranger. And you don't really realize that you're wearing the emotional armor half the time whenever you show up to an appointment. But I mean, we know and we expect it, and that's fine. So why microexpressions may matter in therapy? As a therapist, we listen to words. We listen to someone speak. But sometimes the real story is told between the lines, or more precisely, between the blinks. We not only listen to words, but we kind of listen to your face and your body expressions too, like how you adjust yourself when you're sitting, what's going on your face, how you're breathing, if you're fidgeting, things like that. So let's just say, for example, a client says that they're fine, but you catch a flicker of something like fear in their eyes, or maybe their lip curls up in contempt when discussing a loved one, even though their tone is sweet. These are microexpressions, and they offer access to really deep truths. In therapy, microexpressions can accomplish several things. One of the things they can accomplish is revealing internal conflict. Basically, whenever someone says that they're over it, but your face is telling a completely different story. You may say that you're over it, but you can have a very deep and disturbed expression on your face. Another thing that microexpressions can do is being able to signal trauma triggers before the client is even aware of them. So you may not even realize that something is traumatically triggering for you, but subconsciously your brain can put 2 and 2 together and say that this is dangerous and this is how a microexpression can show up. Another thing that it can do, for example, for a therapist, is help to regulate timing. It helps us to know when to gently press on a subject and when to slow down. Something to remember whenever it comes to a therapeutic session is we don't want to push a topic because we don't want to make someone uncomfortable too fast unless you have built a really good rapport with that client and know that they're going to respond positively if you press harder. I don't normally recommend it. I know a lot of people don't recommend it, but if we see a lot of microexpressions happening in real time, we might know that it's time to slow down. So tuning into these subtle cues basically means that we're not just listening to what's being said. Like I said, we're reading the nervous system in real time. Like we're reading your neurobiological response. So you might be wondering how you can observe something like this without being too invasive. And it's pretty simple. So it's not about calling people out. Reading a microexpression is about bearing gentle witness to something that needs to be brought out into the forefront. So whenever I notice a microexpression, I don't look at somebody and say, "Oh, you looked angry right there," because that just can make someone really uncomfortable, and it can ruin the rapport that you may be trying to build or that you've even already spent a lot of time building with this client. So instead, I might try to offer something like, "Just now, something flickered. Can we slow that moment down together?" Or, "As you were saying that, I noticed a shift. What was that like for you?" Really, honestly, it's less about accuracy and more about inviting curiosity, which is always welcome in therapy. Sometimes it's not the expression that matters, but our own response to it. And that can go for anybody. But in a therapeutic setting, does the anger that our client is exhibiting make us nervous? Does their grief stir something up in us? We are tracking them, yes, but we're also tracking ourselves, always. That's a little something that kind of dives into the subject of countertransference, which I can talk about later. In closing, it's important to remember that microexpressions really remind us that the truth doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes it's whispered. Sometimes it's flashed in the curve of a brow or in the tremble of a lip. And when we slow down, as humans, when we slow down long enough to notice that, we're making space for something that is real, being felt, for what's raw and what's finally ready to be seen. And that's really important to remember for anybody in any setting. You don't have to be a therapist to notice a microexpression. You just have to be human to know how to respond to it to where you don't make the other person uncomfortable and you invite them to trust you and to share with you something that's on their mind. That's all I have. Thank you for coming back today. If you have listened to a couple of my podcasts before, if you're new, welcome. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody. Or, if you want to save it or favorite it, I absolutely welcome you to do that. And hopefully next week I will get back on track with a couple of mindfulness meditations because I know a lot of my regular listeners have missed those greatly. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time.